Welcome back to Morning Joe. Beautiful live picture of the sun coming up over Washington this morning. It's almost 7:30 here on the East Coast. The college prep consultant at the center of a $25 million bribery scheme to boost students' chances of getting into elite colleges has admitted to helping more than 750 families. That's according to court documents. That revelation comes after the FBI charged a total of 50 parents, coaches, and test administrators for allegedly conspiring to get students admitted by academic and athletic deception, to put it mildly. Now, colleges and universities entangled in the scandal are looking into the roles students may have played. The University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, warned yesterday that it might punish current students whose applications were tainted, including potentially revoking their admissions. The University of Southern California followed, adding it will reject any current applicants connected to the scheme. Meanwhile, the parents accused of paying bribes also facing backlash, including several prominent business executives who've been put on leave after companies learned of their alleged involvement in the widespread scandal. Actress Lori Loughlin was released on bail yesterday for allegedly shelling out $500,000 in bribes to get her two daughters into USC by pretending they were crew athletes. They were not. And college and university coaches accused of taking bribes in return for athletic scholarships reportedly have been placed on leave or fired since the FBI announced charges on Tuesday. Joining us now, Time editor-at-large and NBC News political analyst Anand Giridharadas. He's the author of the book Winners Take All, The Elite Charade of Changing the World. Also with us, founder and CEO of Harlem Village Academies, Dr. Deborah Kenney. She's author of the book Born to Rise, the stories of children and teachers reaching their highest potential. Good morning to you both.
Good morning, Willie.
Anand, I said as you walked in, I'm starting to think there might be something to your thesis about what's happening in America.
Thank you to all these rich people for reenacting it every day.
This is almost a parody of what you described in your books and all of your work. What was your initial reaction, and what do you think this story tells us about America?
I think what's so extraordinary is I think the idea that America is rigged in favor of wealthy and powerful people has now become commonplace in many ways. You had Republicans running on it and Democrats running on it in 2016. And that rigging is a generalized rigging. There's a lot of systems in American life that allow all of the wealthy and powerful to benefit disproportionately. Race offers one kind of benefit. The way we fund public schools, the way you don't in Britain, where the nicer the house you have, the better the public school you get, that's a form of rigging, and any number of other things that give all wealthy and powerful people a distinct advantage in the college chase over everybody else. What was so striking is these rich people weren't satisfied with shared rigging, right? It's like they weren't satisfied with first class on a commercial jet, right? Having better seats, bigger seats, a nicer dinner. They wanted private bottle service rigging just for them, with a guarantee over and above the rigging that everybody else benefits from. And in the indictment, the Singer guy, you know, these characters are so important, the Singer figures, because they have figured out what rich people want. They offer this kind of amazing anthropological lens, and Singer had figured out what they want. What they want is a guarantee, right? And he said, my people don't want to write a $2 million check and hope their kid gets a second look. Right? That's too chancy for them. My people want to be done with this thing, I think was his language. They want a guarantee. And it is such an amazing testimony. This is just, remember, one little world that we happen to get a glimpse into because some little piece of glass broke somewhere, right? But you have to understand that this kind of thing is operating in so many domains of our public life. While we have the president's associates day by day pleading guilty to crimes, we have Facebook, which is not a high school sweetheart nostalgia site anymore, but actually one of the principal discursive platforms of our democracy, now under criminal investigation, right? Corruption, in many ways, I think is becoming, if it's not already long, become the central theme of American life in 2019.
Deborah, you've come at this with a different point of view as the founder of Harlem Village Academies. Yeah. You've done incredible work at that school, helping so many kids. You've also seen the process and the competitiveness of getting kids into college. Yeah. So what did you think when you heard this story?
Well, I bring an educator's perspective, obviously, to it. And what I thought about is the emptiness that kids feel during this whole rat race from high school to college admissions. And it's really a crisis of the soul, I think. And as a country, we need to really rethink what our definition of achievement is, because a country's education system reflects its values. And that produces, what kind of people do we want to produce? You know, children who are looking to give something to the world, or just looking to climb a ladder to be successful.
Right.
And then you know, you wonder why so many kids are on antidepressants. So many more kids in high school and college are unhappy and struggling and don't even understand the idea that college is actually an opportunity to find your calling, to search for truth, to study the liberal arts, to ground your life. It's not about beating out somebody else.
Right. And so the emptiness comes from checking a bunch of boxes on your way up through high school, right?
That's right.
Putting your name into the right clubs, being in the right classes, making sure you take the right
Building
AP,
a
and not enjoying any of it along the way.
And, you know, yes, enjoyment, but also the fulfillment
Right.
that comes from building a life of meaning, you know. And I tell my kids in Harlem exactly the same thing that I've told my own 3 kids, you know. Study because it's what's fascinating to you. Find what your calling is. Explore the world. You know, the grades will come because you'll work hard because you're studying what you love. And so what life is about, and what we want our children across this country to understand, is that, you know, life is about finding a way to contribute to the world in whatever way you were meant to. It's not about what can I get and how can I beat everybody else in this zero-sum game. And the testing industry, and it is a multi-billion-dollar industry, is very much connected to this, because there are a lot of people who benefit from kids competing against each other.
That's the important part of this too,
Yeah.
Katie, is that endless pursuit of the SAT score at the expense of so much
Endlessly.
else.
And these parents are obsessed with kind of the branding of academic institutions to the extent that they're going to break the law to get there. But Anand, what I think is particularly galling about this story is that we've seen for some, I think it's Laurie Loughlin's daughter on a video saying, I'm not really that fussed about classes. I'm actually going to go off to Fiji the first week of... She is taking the opportunity. That place she was given is now a place that does not go to somebody else who does not have those kind of contacts.
Some things are zero-sum.
And perhaps some things are zero-sum.
Right.
And that's
You know,
the
so-
problem with this whole
And
situation.
I love the work that you do in Harlem, and what breaks my heart is some of the same wealthy people who, out of the goodness of their hearts, probably give your schools money and give good causes like this money. The charity, by the way, they used to do this bribery was itself a charity in service of disadvantaged youth. There's some of the same people, while doing that and always making sure that's publicly known, it is now revealed we're working behind the scenes to make sure that there were certain seats at universities that the kids you're educating could never compete for. No matter how hard they worked, no matter how bright they were, that seat was locked up. And you in particular have this guy who I really think, we're a celebrity chasing culture, and so the 2 actresses are really striking to us. The most important fish ensnared in this whole thing is a guy no one's talking about named Bill McGlashan. Bill McGlashan, partner at TPG, big private equity firm, but more importantly, one of the leaders of this movement of new capitalism. You have these new, these criticisms of capitalism, but you have people within saying, let's reform capitalism inside. You got the RISE fund that Bill McGlashan starts with Bono, $2 billion for impact investing that's going to help communities while helping others. And it now turns out Bill McGlashan was working to ensure that the very kind of people he was hoping to inspire by the RISE Fund would never be able to compete with his son for the college seat he was locking up for him with a bribe.
So I actually know Bill McGlashan a bit.
I thought you might.
And he has led an exceptional life in every other respect. And as you say, he's trying to do good with his RISE Fund. It's inexplicable to me how this happened. But I want to turn to slightly.
But what if it's not inexplicable, Steve? That's why I think we have to go deeper.
Well, we need the explanation. I guess it's inexplicable at this moment to me. But I wanted to just switch gears slightly with Deborah. So on the other side of the coin, there's a lawsuit going on against Harvard, as you know, at the moment, by the Asian American students, saying they've been discriminated against in favor of diversity and inclusiveness and so on and so forth. So how do you, as an educator of children who are coming from disadvantaged backgrounds, feel about a lawsuit like that?
Well, you know, I look at a lot of these things through the lens of the kids we serve, and they work incredibly hard. And ultimately, you know, this issue, as with many, is definitely about race in a way that makes people uncomfortable. You know, who gets advantages, who is not going to go to jail for something that maybe they should. And so our kids, 100% of our kids get admitted into college, and that can and should be the norm. But the system being rigged economically, right, it starts so much earlier than getting into college. It starts in nursery school and kindergarten.
I have a New York Times story here from 2002. The chairman of Citigroup rigging the system to get his 2 daughters in a nursery school. Now, 2002, those daughters would now be applying to college. So we've come full circle.
Right. And the way education is financed is fundamentally inequitable. Every child in New York should receive the same exact dollar
Correct.
amount, regardless of where they live and where their parents can afford to live. And I'll tell you what would really fix education overnight is if we outlawed private schools. Then if everybody by lottery had to go to any public school, then the folks who control everything would make sure that all the
Public schools work.
funding, that teachers got paid double and triple. So your point is very well taken. It affects our
So,
kids.
Corinne, this is, as Anand said, a window into one case that we know about. The thing that's true, though, is that since the beginning of time, wealthy people have been able to put their thumb on the scale of colleges, whether it's building a building, making a donation, doing whatever they had to do. I've been reading what the standard is these days. Maybe it's $10 million to the school. We'll put your name on a building and your kid gets in with a wink and a nod. This is just a different way of saying that and seeing it put out in public for the world to see.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, Anand said it perfectly. This was on a different level. What the scam that we have been reading about and listening to these last couple of days, which is cruelly insane and infuriating. And but yes, there are legal ways that the rich and the wealthy have had a leg up. They've had a foot in the door by giving donations, by buying buildings, and unfortunately, what this does is it hurts people of color, poor people.
Yeah.
They are left behind. And yeah, the system is broken. The college process is broken. And we need to start focusing on the legal ways of how this is happening. Look, you know, when this story broke 2 days ago, I heard from so many of my friends who are people of color who said, you know what, this gives me some sort of vindication, because so many times we're in class, whether it's an Ivy League school or, you know, what have you, some sort of private institution, and we're asked, well, how did you get here? You know, how is it that you made it into this school? And so when you hear these stories, it's really frustrating and infuriating. And I think we need to focus more on how the system is rigged, how the system is broken, but on the legal side of things as well.
Think about a cultural incentive structure that would have you pay $500,000, take a picture of your daughter on a rowing machine to convince the school that she could row crew.
Willie, if I could add one thing
Yeah.
about the testing culture, right? We need a next generation of assessments in this country. Kids need to be able to sit down and write, because writing reflects your best thinking, on the spot, rather than go through. The wealthy kids get editors to edit their college essays, which is absurd, but that's what happens. And so the way that we can think about the system is to also connect it to, well, what's the educational infrastructure in relation to how kids are tested?
Well, it's by definition unfair. If everyone's taking the SAT score, there are a group of children in this country who will have tutors from an early age. They will have scaffolding put around them. The disadvantaged kids will
Or just some dude taking the test for
Well,
them,
or
15 grand a pop.
Or you could
it's
take
all
that
on the
route.
scale of the things that are legal and sort of common and that every parent
Right.
tries to do in terms of getting influence, making a phone call, and then way up to what we've seen. But
Right.
it's the same sort of process.
Dr. Deborah Kenny, Harlem Village Academies, thanks for being here and thanks for all the great work you do.
Pleasure.
Anand, stay with us if you can. Coming up, Beto O'Rourke officially announces his presidential campaign. He did it about an hour and a half ago, and he's not wasting any time. We'll go live to Iowa, where the former congressman is kicking off a grassroots road trip. That's next on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.